Today we are going to be going over prefixes, but before I start that, I'm going to briefly review what we talked about yesterday. So I have my cue cards here, and the first cue card that we have, and again, you do have copies of these on Google Classroom, is morpheme. And a morpheme is a word part with meaning, okay? Then we have a syllable, and a syllable is a word part, but it centers on a vowel sound, and it has no meaning. So that is the difference between a morpheme and a syllable. So on cue card number 3, we have syllables versus morphemes. In the word unladylike, which is the word we practiced, we broke it apart into syllables and found that we had 4 syllables in unladylike, but we had 3 morphemes in unladylike. So there were 3 word parts that had meaning, but in syllables there were 4 word parts that centered on a vowel. These did not have meaning. Okay. And then we briefly talked about the morpheme types, which are prefixes, roots, and suffixes. And today we are going to only focus on prefixes and compound prefixes. So when you're looking for the prefix of a word, you also need to be sure to check that there aren't 2 prefixes at the beginning of the word, because that would be a compound prefix. So in review, a prefix is a word part, which makes it a morpheme. It's placed at the beginning of a word. It has meaning, that making it a morpheme, and that it changes or adds to the meaning of the word. So cycle could stand alone, but if we say recycle, it adds to that word and changes the meaning. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. And then we have compound prefixes. Okay. And compound prefixes are 2 or more prefixes that are at the beginning of the word. Compound prefixes are not very common, but they do occur. For example, the word unremarkable contains a compound prefix. Okay. Unremarkable. What are the 2 prefixes in unremarkable? So if I take my notes from yesterday, I'm going to take this journal that I wrote in yesterday, and right here I'm just going to write the word unremarkable. And if I were to break this apart, automatically I would look at the front if I was looking at prefixes, and I'd see un. And according to my prefix sheet that you also have provided for you, un is a prefix. But there's a few instances where we have 2 prefixes, and that is called a compound prefix. And in this case, we do have another prefix, and we have the prefix re. And again, if I look on my prefix sheet to verify, re is also a prefix. So just like in the word unremarkable, unrelenting is also separated, and it is a compound word. You will be marking each prefix that you find just like this, okay? You're with a backwards L, okay? So now that you know what to look for and what to be careful about, let's practice isolating prefixes for a few minutes. So I'm going to do isolate the prefixes worksheet 1. Okay, and so I'm gonna look on here, and there's several that I know already off the top of my head. So it says isolate the prefix in each of the following words that has a prefix. Some of these words do not have prefixes. So there are words that stand alone. If they do not have one, like flashlight, flashlight is actually a compound word. It does not have prefixes. It just has two words with separate meanings. Okay. We also need to be careful to look for tricksters, which again, tricksters were words that look like they had the prefix on there, but it didn't have any meaning, like the word red and like the word read. Okay. So if I look at the first one, it says pronouns. Automatically, I broke it apart and I said pronouns. So I could go ahead and put this in here, but if I want to double check, I can go into my worksheet on my prefixes definition list and see that pro actually does have a meaning and it is a prefix. So I'm gonna isolate it by putting my backwards L. The next word is unanswered. Again, I know that un is a prefix because we've already discussed it twice in unrelenting and unremarkable. We also have the word implant. And if I look on my prefix list, im means a not. Discover, I do know that dis is a prefix, so I'm gonna break it apart here. Enslave, en. Telepathy, I do know that tele is on telephone, so I believe that tele is a prefix. Then I have the word inch, and I know that in is a prefix, which is also right here on my sheet, and it means not into. But if I break it apart, I notice that ch stands alone and it has no meaning. So this to me is going to be a trickster. And for all intents and purposes, we're going to write a T for trickster. We have impair, which is separated at M, retain, demote, submarine, decline, submit, imprint, multi-purpose. So multi-purpose is a little confusing to me because to me it could be a compound word, which multi could stand alone and purpose could stand alone. But then if I think about it, I've never heard multi by itself. So I think it might be a prefix. So for this purpose, I'm going to go back to my prefix sheet and I'm going to look up multi. And if I look it up, it is there and it actually means many. So I'm going to separate it here. And I know what purpose means, so it's multi-purpose is something that has many purposes. We have expose. We have comfort, which I do think that com as in comfort is a prefix, so I am going to separate it here. We have misread. We have non-toxic. We have supercharge, which again, I think it may be a compound word, but I've also heard super in other words like superimposed, superfluous. So I'm gonna look at my prefix list if I'm unsure, and I'm gonna double check. So if I look on here, super is a prefix and it means over and above, and it's used in superscript and superimpose. So I am gonna separate here. Display, monotone, again another word that I know is a compound word, but I have heard mono in other words such as monotonous and monologue. So if I look on here, it says a mono is one or single, and again they actually did use the word monologue, so yay for me, knew that word. And mono. Then we have extract. Again, I already knew this one's a trickster, but it's easy to just look through the words and want to just isolate RE. We got to make sure that it's not a trickster. So I'm gonna put T on here because I do know for sure it is a trickster. We have in case. We have deed. Now I have seen a DE before, and it was something that we mentioned in the last lesson. And we said that with the word DE or the prefix DE, we needed to kind of look to see if there wasn't one that was longer, as in like DEM, as in demonstrate or democracy. So if I isolate DE, because there's no DEE in the prefix list, I have to look at this and say ED has no meaning. So this would in fact be a trickster. We have a propel, interstate, forecast, paraphrase. Then we have the word Indian. And I know that in, it again is a prefix, but DN has no meaning on its own. So I'm going to call this word a trickster. And then we have adjunct, which AD means to and toward. So it is a prefix. And then we have exclaim. So that is how you do this activity. And so I am going to give you your activity to do on your own. You're ready to practice on your own. So you'll need to determine whether there is a prefix on each word, okay? And you must isolate the prefix using the backwards L. Watch out because some of the words on the worksheet do not have prefixes, okay? And those are the trickster words or the compound words. And you may use a prefix definition list for reference. And again, mine is yellow, but I did give you one with your classroom assignment. And if you did not get one with this assignment, you can always look back at the resources tab. So your assignment for today is to isolate the prefixes in the following words that has a prefix, and some of these words do not have prefixes. And so on the words that don't have prefixes, I'm gonna ask you to write the letter T because it is a trickster. If you have any questions, you can join the live stream, or you may ask them at ygonzalez7532@uvaldecisd.net, or you can call or text me at 830-279-1491. Thanks.